On the 2nd of January 1900, inside of Vienna's city prison, a 29-year-old woman was brought to her execution on the pole inside of the courtyard. She was someone who was condemned by pole hanging, and this was different to the gallows, as an executioner and his assistant secured a noose around the neck of the condemned on a 3-metre post, before a stool they were stood on was removed or a chest sling was removed. At the end of World War II, the execution method was used upon a number of prominent war criminals who were responsible for the deaths of thousands, and these men were executed inside of Hungary and Czechoslovakia. But why was Juliane Hummel condemned in this way, and what did she do that sent her to her execution? Welcome to the Fortress. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Juliane Hummel was a poor girl who lived inside of Vienna, and her husband worked as a servant and she had a daughter. But Juliane was a terrible mother, and she had no care for her daughter Anna, and the neighbours regularly complained that she neglected her, and that tragically the young girl was subjected to a terrible ordeal. This resulted in her death at the age of 5 in March 1899, and the doctor claimed she had been starved and then beaten to death, and that she had been murdered. Juliane, it was said, was the one who struck the fatal blow, and she was charged with murder and was sentenced to death. The execution method inside of Austria was known as the Austrian gallows, and they utilised a 3-metre pole or post, and on this a number of other criminals in Vienna's city prison were condemned. There was an issue though, as executioner Karl Sellinger had died in the year before, and there was not an executioner inside of Austria, and the one from Prague travelled to do the job. It was claimed that when his final preparations were being made in the prison courtyard, that there was a fog descending on the city, and Juliane spent her final nights in her cell holding her rosary beads, and she was surrounded by candles and images of Mary. Doctors checked her pulse, and she would continue to plead her innocence, blaming her husband for Anne's death. But at 8 a.m. on the day of her execution, the 2nd of January 1900, she attended a Catholic Mass. It was said that she was a small and fragile woman, and she had black hair in an unkempt way, and she wore a dark dress and dark stockings with brown clogs. The chaplain and warden had to carry her to the execution post, as she was crying and weeping profusely. The executioner seemed unnerved by this, and Juliane was the first woman he had executed. There were roughly 40 people inside of the prison courtyard who had received tickets to watch the execution, and there was a nervous tension as she was taken to the execution post. A leather vest was placed over her shoulders, and her ankles and arms were tied. The executioner did this while she was calling out, "Oh my God, oh my God." She was very pale, and she placed her head on the warden's shoulder, and she was being secured to the execution post. She said, "My God, I'm not guilty of starving Anna. I'm not guilty of killing her." She continued to scream, but the executioner then placed a noose around her neck and pulled tight. He took a step backwards and shouted up, and the wardens then raised the platform where Juliane was stood, and when he shouted "now," the wardens removed the platform. The executioner approached the strangling, hanging woman, and he then covered her head and pushed it backwards, and it took a number of minutes for Juliane to die, and with this it was deemed that the executioner did not perform his job very well. He was then immediately sent back to Prague. The execution of Juliane Hummel was one in which saw a brutal woman who neglected her own child and caused her death, being condemned in front of a crowd of dozens. She was a woman who, when confronted with her execution, realised that her actions were harrowing and very real, and she only screamed for herself when taken to the execution post. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.